It's funny how life has a way of blindsiding you, even when you think you've got everything figured out. Sometimes the people you trust most turn out to be the ones capable of causing the deepest wounds. I learned this the hard way, and it's a story that even years later still haunts me. Let's rewind back to my childhood, back when everything seemed so simple and so innocent. I met my best friend, let's call her Sandy, in the 2nd grade. We were just 7 years old, and from the moment we met, we clicked, like we were meant to be sisters. Sandy came from a family that wasn't as close-knit as mine. Her parents were always busy running their business, and they didn't seem to care too much about where she was or what she was doing. It wasn't long before Sandy became a fixture in my home. She was there so often. My parents practically adopted her as their own. Being an only child, I loved having her around, and my parents, who were incredibly warm and welcoming, treated Sandy like a daughter. Every summer, she practically lived with us. My dad would even take her to sign up for softball with me, paying for her fees and uniform so we could play on the same team. If we went out to dinner, Sandy was right there with us. Every vacation, Sandy came along. When it was time for back-to-school shopping, my mom made sure Sandy had what she needed. My dad even once paid for a hefty speeding ticket Sandy had gotten. We were inseparable, or so I thought. Looking back, I wonder if my family's generosity played a part in what happened later. By the time we hit our senior year of high school, life was as good as it could get. That's when I met Jim. He was a couple of years older than me, and we had that instant spark when we met at a football game. He wasn't from my school, but that made it all the more exciting. By the following week, Jim had asked me out, and I was beyond excited. Red Lobster and a movie? It was the perfect first date, and soon enough, we were officially boyfriend and girlfriend. I was on Cloud 9, thinking I had it all, a cute older boyfriend in my senior year of high school and a best friend who was happy for me. Or so I thought. At first, Sandy seemed excited for me too, but I started to notice little things. Jim and Sandy didn't get along, and it felt like I was caught in the middle of a competition for my time. I tried my best to balance it all, still prioritizing time with Sandy, but it wasn't enough. The tension between the two of them grew until I thought they hated each other. Little did I know, there was something much darker going on behind my back. Graduation came and went, and that summer, Sandy and I were preparing to move into our college dorm together. It was supposed to be an exciting new chapter in our lives. Jim, though, started acting possessive, constantly bringing up how I'd be living at college, and he wouldn't. He worried about what would happen to our relationship, even though my college was only 20 minutes from his house. I reassured him time and time again that everything would be fine, but something in his behavior nagged at me. I brushed it off. After all, it was just nerves, right? August 8th rolled around, my birthday, just 2 weeks before Sandy and I were supposed to move into our dorm. The plan was perfect. Sandy, another friend, and I had tickets to see Panic at the disco, our favorite band. Sandy had even bought the ticket for me as a birthday gift. We were beyond excited. But as the time to leave for the concert got closer, Sandy was nowhere to be found. At first, it didn't bother me too much. Sandy had a habit of running off to spend weekends with guys she met on dating apps. It wasn't out of character for her to vanish for a couple of days. My other friend and I were a little worried, but we decided to go to the concert anyway. After all, it was my birthday, and I wasn't going to let her flakiness ruin my night. The concert was amazing. We had a great time, and I almost forgot about Sandy's absence. But the next morning, something nagged at me. I still hadn't heard from her. So I reached out to her sister. Her sister said she hadn't heard from Sandy either, but would let me know when she did. I tried to move on with my day. Jim had planned a birthday date for me, and I didn't want to dwell on Sandy's sudden disappearance. During the date, I told Jim that I was starting to worry about her. He laughed it off, saying she'd probably run off with some guy. I didn't think much of it at the time, but when the date ended, I expected Jim to bring me back to his place, but he said he had to be up early for work and drop me off at home instead. Looking back, that should have been a red flag, but I didn't see it. Oh, not yet. The next morning, Sandy's sister still hadn't heard from her, and now she was getting worried. The weekend was over, and Sandy still hadn't showed up. Her sister texted Sandy, threatening to report her as a missing person if she didn't check in soon. Finally, Sandy sent her a picture of herself lying on a man's chest. I was livid. Why hadn't she reached out to me? Why was she only sending cryptic messages to her sister? It didn't make sense. I drove over to meet Sandy's sister at their parents' business to try to figure out what was going on. When her sister showed me the photo, I felt like I had been punched in the gut. It was blurry, but I knew that chest. I had spent months with Jim. I recognized his body instantly. My mind went into overdrive. Could it really be him? I immediately called Jim to confront him. No answer. I called again. Blocked. I was a whirlwind of emotions, anger, confusion, betrayal. I had never even considered the possibility that Sandy and Jim could have been sneaking around behind my back. But there it was, right in front of me. I grabbed Sandy's sister, got into my car, and drove straight to Jim's house. And there, sitting in his driveway, was Sandy's car. The reality of it all hit me like a ton of bricks. I didn't even go inside. I didn't need to. I snapped a photo of her car and I sent it to Sandy. Her response was like a knife to the heart. We're in love. Jim's breaking up with you, and I'm moving in with him. You should probably find a new roommate for college. Her words hit me harder than I thought was possible. I had lost my best friend and my boyfriend in one fell swoop. And to make matters worse, it was just 10 days before we were supposed to move in together at college. I couldn't breathe. I drove Sandy's sister home, numb to the world around me. Once I got to my parents' house, I gathered up all of Sandy's belongings and returned them to her parents' place. It felt like I was getting rid of every trace of her, but the pain lingered. I spent the next few days crying, screaming, trying to process the ultimate betrayal. I had lost two of the most important people in my life in the cruelest way imaginable. I didn't tell my parents. I didn't tell my other friends. The only people who knew were those directly involved. I realized I needed to act fast. There was no way I could live with Sandy at university. I joined a Facebook group for incoming freshmen at my college and quickly found a new roommate. The next week was a blur of logistics and emotions as I tried to change all my plans for the upcoming school year. I needed to move on. When college started, it was a fresh start. I threw myself into campus life, loving the freedom and the new experiences. My roommate was amazing, and for a while, I almost forgot about Jim and Sandy. Life was good again, or so it seemed. Winter break arrived in early December, and a few days in, I got a text from Jim. He wanted to meet up to talk about everything that had happened. For days, I ignored him, but something inside me caved, and I agreed to meet him at a local park. We met in a secluded area, and after a few minutes of awkward conversation, he tried to kiss me. I pushed him away, furious. I couldn't believe he had the audacity, but something in me shifted. I decided to secretly record the whole encounter. Jim tried again, this time getting more aggressive. He started taking off his pants, and I knew I had to leave. I pushed him off and got into my car, and my phone captured everything. For days, I debated whether to send the video to Sandy. Deep down, I wanted her to know Jim was a snake, just like he'd been with me. But I hesitated. What good would it do? A week later, I couldn't hold it in anymore. On Christmas Eve, I created a group text with Jim, Sandy, and her sister. I sent the video, and chaos erupted. Jim lost his mind, threatening both me and Sandy. But the damage was done. Sandy broke up with him on Christmas Day, and Jim wouldn't take no for an answer. Despite everything, I felt an odd sense of responsibility. I helped Sandy gather her things from Jim's house and took her back to her parents. She told me about the relationship being toxic. She told me how she cried every day from hurting me so bad and just wanted to go back to her normal life. She was so upset she ruined our friendship and our college experience together. I decided to forgive her. We remained friends for about a year after that, although it was never the same. I always felt stupid for forgiving her, and one day I just told her I didn't want to be friends anymore. We haven't spoken since. My parents still ask me to this day what happened to her and why we aren't friends anymore. They still do not know what she did to me. Jim still tries to reach out to me from fake numbers, but that toxic phase of my life is now in the past. This lady was super surprised when she found out that her boyfriend was cheating on her with his own cousin. This is one intense story. Check out this video for details.